Don't rely on Social Security, says prominent financial advisor. I'm not going to say his name in the YouTube title because I don't want to, whatever it is, use. There's a term you call like you're punching up or punching down. I won't do that. But that's Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey says you shouldn't rely on Social Security. Do this instead. And what's his alternative? Invest 15% of your money into your 401k and then take whatever you got left over and put it to a Roth. Okay, Susie Orman, because the vast majority of Americans just have 15% they can put into their 401k, and then they got money left over to put to a Roth. There used to be an old Saturday Night Live skit where the guy called, he had an emergency, car broke down or something like that, so he got on the payphone, and he called Susie. This is back in the 90s. He got on the payphone. He said, "Hey, Susie Orman." He was calling the Susie Orman show. He goes, "Hey, Susie Orman, I got an emergency. My cars won't start. What should I do?" She goes, "Well, first of all, you should invest 3 to 6% in an emergency fund." He goes, "Okay, but I can't. My car's not starting right." And she goes, whatever it was, "You really need to have $1 million before you retire." He goes, "Okay, but I don't have any money right now. What do I do?" And she goes, basically the Dave Ramsey equivalent, get a high growth mutual fund. It was funny as hell, dude. That was one of the funniest skits I've ever seen, other than Phil Hartman's politically incorrect private investigator, PIPI. And that got it made the lefties go so crazy that I'd take it off the air. You can't even find it now. It's embarrassing. All right, so I just want to ask Dave Ramsey, why can't I rely on Social Security? And of course, Dave would say, because the government isn't there to take care of you. What the government gives, the government can take. I'm like, oh, okay. Interesting. So if I invest 15% of my money in the stock market, get a high growth mutual fund, like you say, you know what I'm saying? I can rely on that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So your mutual funds are more reliable than Social Security. Yes, because what the government gives, the government can take. All right. So how many people have mutual funds? How many people have Social Security? I'm just throwing it out there. I think a hell of a lot more people got Social Securities than they have high-growth mutual funds. That's true. And I think all these people could vote too, right? Yeah, that's true. Okay. So if my Social Security goes down in value because the government took it away, I'm just curious, Dave Ramsey, what do you think happens to the stock market? You think it just keeps going up at, 12% a year? Can you hear yourself, sir? The absurdity of that idea that Social Security is less resilient than the stock market. Are you even hearing yourself? Now, I'm not saying you should not invest. Not at all. I am saying scaring people away from Social Security in order to invest in the stock market is the equivalent of that we landed on the moon. It's silly and it makes me laugh. All right? Because that's just dumb. The Social Security is backed by the taxpayer. It is a Ponzi scheme, 100%. A legitimate, legal Ponzi scheme. We can argue that all day long. But it pays over 66 million people some kind of monthly payment right now. Your stock and bond mutual funds are not financed by a government Ponzi scheme. They're just not. They do not pay 66 million people money right now. There is no taxpayer funding of this. They're not going to get bailed out. They're just not. Social Security will not go bankrupt. Or it could go bankrupt, but it will always, the federal government's bankrupt in that regard. The military's bankrupt. The Department of Education's bankrupt. The whole damn thing's bankrupt. Social Security is 10 times more reliable than your investments in the stock and bond market. Just got the horn of these guys today from Colorado, legends. The guys asked me about Social Security. And I said, dude, if they took away Social Security, I've said this 1,000 times a son, not just took away, just reduced it by 20%. What is the main driver of growth in the economy? It's personal consumption expenditures, PCE. All right, 70% of our GDP, our growth in the economy, is driven by your and my ability to spend money. That's what it is, which is why this Keynesian is called the demand side instead of the supply side. We make people have a demand, i.e. spend money, they'll increase economic growth. Yeah, we can argue that, but still, at the end of the day, most people would agree GDP is based on consumer expenditures, all right? If 66 to 70 million people had a decline of 20% of their personal consumption, what does that do to the economy? Does it make it grow or make it tank? It makes it tank worse than the Great Depression. All right. On top of that, let's say those 66 or 70 million people, let's say 15 million of those people would have to then supplement that 20% loss in Social Security with their stock and bond funds. What do you think happens to the stock and bond market? Does it go up or does it go down? There'll be a mass sale. Right? What happens when you have a mass amount of basically supply, in this case sellers, and you don't have a mass amount of buyers on the other side? It makes the prices go way down. It's a vicious circle. You're draining the swamp because people say, I got to liquidate to pay for that 20% I need that Social Security is no longer providing me for. And again, this is only 15% of the population, 20% of the population, whatever it is. But 20% of the population have stocks and bonds. They'll say, I have to sell my stocks and bonds in order to supplement the money that Social Security is not providing to me anymore. A massive amount of sellers. There has to be a buyer on the other side. Who are the buyers on the other side? Does not anyone remember mark-to-market accounting? When the bond market fell below, was it AA quality or investment grade quality? All these bonds are now a junk grade, or I can't remember what exactly it was. They had to, by charter, liquidate their bonds. So you had this mass influx of sellers, but there were no buyers on the other side. So the seller says, I'll sell for 10. And it's like, I'd love to buy it at 10, but I'm not a buyer. I am also a seller. So you had 5 sellers saying, I'll sell at 10, I'll sell at 9, I'll sell at 8, I'll sell at 7. There's like, that'd be great. There's no one to buy it. There's no one to buy. There's no buy side. So regardless of what the seller was asking for, there's no one to take the other side of the bid or the trade. What happens to prices? It goes down. And what happened to prices in 2007, 8, and then 9? The stock market fell 57%. What happened to the bond market? It had to be, corporate bonds, banks had to be bailed out. The idea that Social Security is somehow suspect, it might be the most absurd thing I've ever heard, man. I don't understand it. The economy would fall worse than the Great Depression. Probably even be worse than the 1890s depressions, because you would have no end in sight, because everyone would liquidate everything, and yet you'd still be carrying these high interest mortgages and stuff. All these people, it just in the housing market would crash. It'd be the worst thing that ever happened in the American economy, and no one's going to let that happen. So the idea you can't rely on Social Security, it's just silly, dude. I literally, CDs. I had a lady email today. She's worried about government debt. And she's a nice lady. We knew in college, a good friend of my wife's, and I like her. I said, government bonds are the least thing you should be worried about. Least thing. The government can print money. I mean, it's fiat money. They just deem it into existence. FDIC can't do that. CDs can't do that. Stocks can't do that. Corporate bonds can't do that. I just said, let's put our priorities back here, which is say, what is the most likely thing to go kaput? And it's not government bonds. It's just not. It's certainly not Social Security. All right. God bless. Those are your thoughts.